Alright everybody, I am here at New Hampshire in test session mode, driving a truck. Going to try to lay down a decent lap, then tell you about the line I'm using, the setup, all that stuff. I have ran a 29.608 with this setup. I looked at the leaderboard, and to be on the leaderboard 10th place, you'd need to be a 29.4. So I'm a little bit off of that, a couple of tenths, but given my skill level and how difficult this track is to get your hands around, I will take it, and I feel like that's a pretty good accomplishment for me. I'd like to get something in the 29.7s here on video to be able to kind of validate the setup, and if I can, I'll talk about the line I am running, and then show the setup, obviously.
That was a better lap.
There was a 29.6. I am thrilled with that. So with that, let's start talking about the line I was running, and then I will go show the setup. A couple things about the setup is, one is at New Hampshire, you are always trying to fight that the car can be really fast for a few laps, but then as the tires wear, it gets really loose coming off the corners. This setup is pretty good about that. When the tires get down to near the end of the fuel run, you'll have to be a little bit cautious coming off the corners with the throttle, but that's at the very, very end. And the tires last. I think the tire light came on when I was racing this, like with 2 laps to go in the fuel run. I think I was pitting and still had like 16 or 17% on the tires, which I thought was pretty good. So let's go back to talking about the line. Right before this second Coca-Cola sign, and right about the place where you can see that the pavement changes, this is where I am turning the wheel and getting on the brakes. And I say that turning the wheel and getting on the brakes, I try to make an effort to turn the wheel just an instant before I get on the brakes. I feel like that gets the truck pointed in the right direction a little bit and makes it a little easier to get into the corner if you turn the wheel just before you hit the brakes. I try to come in, and it's kind of an odd line in 3 and 4. I try to start below the suggested line, but then by mid-corner, I am drifting above it, and then I usually wind up on my best laps exiting above it. So it's kind of not the arc that's on the suggested line, but you kind of start it in low and then drive it out higher. But that's kind of the line I am using, and you can be pretty aggressive, especially until the tires are really worn. When you want to get on the throttle really hard. But what's happening, and this is how you do it at a lot of tracks, you turn the wheel really hard going into the corner. Okay, then when you are getting back on the throttle, you're easing off of the wheel. It seems like you're going to want to spin out when you got that wheel cranked all the way to the left and you're on the throttle. So what I try to do is turn the wheel hard when I am off the throttle. Then as I'm getting back on it, I'm not turning the wheel as hard because I've kind of already got the truck rotated. Coming into turn 1. Right up here, before you get to the end of the pit road, just for the end of pit road, I am turning the wheel, hitting the brakes. I'd call it moderately on the brakes. I'm not real hard on it, but I'm not tapping them either. Turn to 1 and 2 is different, it seems like. I don't know how it's different. I don't know if it's because pit road is there. But I try to start below the yellow or below the suggested line here. In mid-corner, I drift up. So from that perspective, it's just like 3 and 4. But then on exit, I try to kind of get back down here and get below the suggested line here coming on exit. So I drive the entrance in the middle the same, but on exit, I try to be below the suggested line in 2. But in 4, I try to be kind of above the suggested line. So that is the line I'm using. Let's go in and let's talk about the setup. This, by the way, as you could probably tell from me driving, is a 3-gear setup. I felt like I got the RPMs I wanted off of a 3-gear setup better than a 4-gear setup. I just wasn't happy. I felt like I either was lagging or bogging the engine down coming off of the corners on a 4-gear setup, or the other end I was redlining way before hitting the rev limiter, actually way before the end of the straightaway. So I had to go to a 3-gear setup. Fooled around with a lot of things, but this is what I came up with. Let's see. The bump and rebound, not a whole lot other than that right rebound is up really high, at least by my standards, that's up really high. That helps you with corner exit. So going up on that will help with corner exit. Going down on it will make it tighter on the exit. But I did that to help the truck rotate coming out of the corner. The weight and wedge settings, that's pretty typical of what I am running anymore, a fairly heavy front weight and a fairly heavy wedge. I was surprised that I went with my standard springs. Usually the standard springs don't work on the flat tracks, but it seemed to work out well this time. Tire pressures I did not mess with at all. Those are the default numbers. I tried to balance out the tire wear. So I wound up with camber of 3.3 and negative 2.6. That seemed to work pretty well. You can actually get more aggressive with those, but it can almost help the truck turn too much. In other words, you can get too aggressive with those, and it can make the truck kind of snap loose because you've got so much camber in it. The sway bar, very, very stiff front sway bar, but that is typical of what you see in a flat track. I think when you look at the default setup for this, it's a sway bar 2, which I think is incredibly tight, and I could not make the car rotate with that, so I wound up with a 1.775, which is down from the default, but still pretty thick sway bar there and pretty stiff. These are about as high up on the track bar as I have ever ran. 15 is actually the max on the track bar. You cannot go up any higher on the track bars. And again, I had to do that because the front sway bar is so stiff. The wedge is up so high. Those are all things that higher numbers make it stiffer or make it tighter. So I had to go high on the track bar to still get the truck to rotate. But it seems like it worked out as a pretty decent combination. The wheel lock is at 8, which is odd for me. I almost always run it at 11 or 12. 8 gives you a looser feel because it kind of quickens up the steering. But with the sharp turns you've got here at New Hampshire, this is almost like a big Martinsville. I felt like I needed that to help get the truck to turn. With the sharp turns, I also went with the steering offset of 0.2, which I don't think I've ever done. So there's a lot to talk about in this setup, but New Hampshire is not like a lot of tracks, so it's not surprising that it's a lot different. Final comment, and I do think this is an important one, play around with the rear end ratio to fit your driving style. If you can rotate the corners and maintain more speed through the corners better than I can, you might want to turn that rear end ratio down to like a 3.75 or a 3.70 because you might get better lap times with that. The flip side of that is I could not get a faster lap time with a 3.89, but I really wondered if it was going to be a better choice for a long run, because as the tires wear, you're going to have to wait longer to get back into throttle, which gives the engine RPMs a chance to drop more. By going with that 3.89 gear, you've kind of got more torque to get the RPMs back up and get power. So I really questioned if I should go with a 3.89 because I thought that maybe it would be better on a long run, that maybe you wouldn't lose, your times wouldn't fall off as much. If you run a 3.89, you will be hitting the rev limiter before the end of the straightaway. I can pretty much guarantee it. But those are some things that I would recommend you playing around with to fit your personal style. If you do have problems with it getting loose coming off of the corners late in the run, or one thing I would suggest is adjust your line to make sure that when you're coming off the corner, you are not cranking the wheel completely to the left, that you've already kind of eased off that and started to straighten it up a little bit. But if you are still having problems, adjustments I would make is go down on the right track bar, go up on the wheel lock, or go down on the right rear spring or right rear tire pressure. Those are all things that will tighten the truck up and keep it from getting loose on exit for you. Oh, and one more thing, you can go down on that right front rebound. That will help that situation too. So with all those tips for you and that setup, I'm going to say thank you guys for the support. Appreciate everything that you guys have done for me as far as the likes, the subscriber count, the positive feedback in the comments. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Means a great deal to me. Hope this setup works for you. Hope you guys have a great night, and I will catch up